So when it comes to making mugs and even pitchers, you do need to put handles on them. And what I like to have always set up here is I need a few things. I need a good sized bucket of water. I need some clay. It's good to have a soft blade fettling knife here, your needle tool, and a paintbrush. And you'll see why I need all of these things. So what I start off with is a nice sized piece of clay that I'm going to pull multiple handles from. And I want to roll this form into a nice cone shape. So I'm using a little more pressure with my right hand as I roll this so it has a nice taper to it. It's good to use clay that has been cut directly from the bag for this or pug milled, because it will have a lot less ripping once you're starting to pull. So when I feel like this is a good shape to work with, I always have my bucket here, and I also always have a towel right here with me, because I never want to touch my handles with sloppy hands. So I'm going to move some of this over and get my tools ready. These handles here I pulled earlier today and have had set up so I can show you how to attach them, because I don't attach them directly after I pull them because they end up being a little too soft and they end up having a tendency to slump. So I have those set so I can show you attaching. But for pulling, I hold all of this clay and I make sure the biggest importance when it comes to pulling handles is that your hand and the clay stays wet. So as I first start, I'm rounding all of this mass and I'm making sure all of it is wet, and you see how I'm turning it as I go. Notice also that I'm not pulling my handles lazy. I see a lot of students have their arm to the side here, and then they're just like this, and that makes the handle twist and rip oddly. So my hand is upright, I'm holding straight down, and I always make sure that that position is the same. Handle pulling should be treated the same as making your pots, trimming your pots. It can make or break a piece, so it's very important to have the same discipline. When I feel like the form here is a correct width, then I'll start sectioning from this. And I'm going to start flattening. So I'm going to use my hands pressured like this with my thumb and my finger and start flattening one side. You'll be able to see when I turn this to do the other side. So I flatten that one side, and now I'm going to flatten the other side. If at any point it feels like the clay is starting to grip, I make sure I wet my hand. So I go back and forth with turning. Now, I'm going to move the water aside. I'm going to dry my hand just a little bit. It's also nice to have an apron on so you can just wipe your hands down your apron. My hand is now clean, and I can lay this down and I can hold this part of the handle up. Use my fettling knife and cut a section of this. I then will arch this and position this on the board. And then I pick this back up and start pulling again. The more handles you have to work with, the more options you have. Many cups will want to have a smaller handle, a fatter handle, whatever the case is. The more you pull, the more options you're going to have. So my recommendation is to always pull a good amount. So again, I'm working from the same section that I had before. I'm getting that to a nice thickness that I like. It's not too thick, not too thin. You don't want it to be razor sharp at the side so it cuts somebody's hands when they pick it up. Holding this again, I cut and arch this. Okay, so I have my mug here. What I need to first do is assess on the mug where I want the handle to start and where I want it to end. And it's very important. In the beginning, it's very hard to judge this, but the more you attach handles, the more that you're going to decide how wide do you like handles, where do you like them to be positioned, and what's comfortable for you. My hand size is very different than the hand size of a 50-year-old man. So my handle might be different than somebody else's. So you're going to find what you like. So I'm going to take the time to just decide that I want my handle to start here. And I'm going to start drawing score marks right here in a line. And I'm pretty sure I want my handle to end about here. So I always make sure that I'm holding the piece and making sure that those bottom score marks are directly underneath the top score marks. I don't want my handle to have an odd twist off to the side. So make sure that they're straight in line. The paintbrush comes in handy here because again, I usually don't use slip. I'll use water to paint directly on those score marks, and then I take the time to rescore it. As you can see. So with the handles that I've already pulled, I'm going to take one of these. You can see that it's holding its arch a lot better. It's not as soft as one of these, and I could pick one of these up and, you know, this one that I just pulled, it's very easy to distort. I could change it, but this one, much stiffer. So, with my fettling knife, one of the most important things when it comes to handles is to do a proper 45-degree angle cut. A 45-degree angle cut for your handle will allow an upward lift for your handle. So think of that when you cut the top. So the top part here, I need to hold and cut a 45-degree angle. Line this up. So you can see this angle cut right here. This is a 45-degree angle cut. So when I attach that, it will automatically have an upward lift. For the bottom of the handle, what I do is an angle cut that is opposite that. You can see that. See how this angles downward? Like that. So, I will take the time to really lightly score my handle. I like to let this handle set up, again like I said, but the big thing is you cannot let them set up too much. There is some altering you're going to have to do when you attach these. So if they get too stiff and you try to alter it, it will crack. So they cannot be so set up that that cannot happen. So I'm going to position the handle kind of underneath where I scored. I'm going to push the handle up against that score mark so it's really nice and attached. And that 45-degree angle cut is going to really provide that upward lift that I need. So I'm going to lightly bend the handle around so it makes that connection. Usually what I do at this point is I lift this up and I say to myself, do I like how wide this is? Do I want to cut this down more so the handle is not as wide and smaller? At this point, I can make a lot of adjustments to this. So if I wanted to make this handle not as wide and fit in closer, then I would take the time to cut this handle down pull that part away and be able to then look at how wide the handle is. And I feel like that's much better. So I now take the time to push this area in, really make sure it's nice and attached. What I also like to do is take the time to use my paintbrush to really get in and clear all of the score marks that I have made. Taking the time to do this now is very important. Some people say, well, I'll do this after it's bisque fired and I'll sand it. It's much harder to sand bisque than it is to just lightly clean this up with a nice brush. Take all that messy score areas away, and you'll have a nice, refined